Talktainmentradio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Alrighty, good morning and welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com, the greatest radio in the world. And you are in touch with the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are all over the globe. We welcome you to TalkTainmentRadio.com. That's right, we welcome you. We have on the line Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., who will be answering addressing your concerns and maybe even some of your comments. And you can call the show by calling in the United States anyway, maybe around the world, I don't know, 877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com, and we will try to get you on this week or maybe in the coming weeks. Okay, I think that's all the business that I have here. Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., how are you this day, sir?
I'm still learning.
Yes, sir. And what would you like to open up today's chapter of the program with?
Well, someone on one of the programs earlier, it was either last week or the week before, said that, well, Mr. Fuller is doing a lot of talking here, but he's not saying anything new. Maybe he should say something new. So I thought about that, because anybody who makes a suggestion under compensatory law, meaning making up for what's missing, you should pay attention to that suggestion. In fact, all suggestions in problem solving should be paid attention to. Paid attention to by whom? To whom the suggestion or the recommendation is made to. So that's anybody. So if someone is telling me that I'm going to give you a suggestion, I should pay attention to it, because that person is giving me some information that I should pay attention to, because that's how all things, particularly all problems, are solved if we're working on a problem. Someone makes a suggestion, that suggestion should be taken into consideration. I'm saying all of this because that's a part of what the law of compensation is supposed to be about. That's the epicenter of it. Making up for what's missing, whatever is missing. If there's anything that's missing that should be where it should be, then that should always be given maximum consideration, because that's how all problems are solved. So someone says on this program to me, why don't you say something new? Well, then I have to consider that, and I've thought of saying something new, but then say something new like what? And for what? Because all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. So that suggestion raises questions. And the question is, if I'm going to say something new like what? And for what? If you're going to introduce something that's new, quote, unquote, then you must have a reason for doing so. But I would like to know what it is that's new that I'm supposed to be saying about a problem that hasn't been solved. So I'm supposed to be saying everything that's new. But I have to find out what that new thing would be that would solve the problem, since the problem has not been solved. Now, what problem are we talking about? We're talking about the biggest problem on earth, and that is the so-called, quote-unquote, race problem, in the form of what when we analyze it, it's in the form of what we call, maybe loosely or maybe not so loosely, the system of white supremacy. That's the race problem of this planet. That is the race problem. There's no other race problem. You're going to talk about a race problem based on color. You're talking about the system of white supremacy. You're not talking about any other problem that deals with race. There is no other problem dealing with race. That is the epicenter of the race problem. Mm-hmm. And everything else is just non-racial, period. The problem is the system of white supremacy. So how do you talk about it and say something new? Well, everything that you say is supposed to be something that will solve the problem. So sometimes you can say it and people don't absorb what's being said. So I have put in the front of the textbook for victims of white supremacy that you can get by going to producejustice.com, mm-hmm. the words, if you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Now, if you run past that and start looking for something new, you have run past the very thing that you're going to be talking about when you say something new. If there is something new to say, and there should be something new to say that would solve the problem. Mm-hmm. But it hasn't been done yet by anybody.
Yes.
But if you run past just that one stop sign, if you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. In every area of activity. Economics will be confusing. There's a massive confusion. I mean, how people use their time and energy. You know, you see people all the time going here, going there, doing this, doing that. It's a massive confusion, a lot of it. Mm-hmm. But if you don't understand white supremacy and you're confused about people's behavior, then you will not understand anything about those people's behavior.
Yes. And
that's anywhere on this planet, because mm-hmm. that's the dominant, mm-hmm. most powerful force among the people of this entire planet.
You know, I am so glad that you addressed that particular statement, because I've opened up several shows that you and I have done together with that statement that you penned maybe before 1971, but it sure is in the opening of the United Independent Code System Concept, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and for victims of white supremacy. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, the depth of that statement really hit me, and a light bulb came on how profound that statement is, because you say it. If you do not understand racism, which is white supremacy, what it is and how it works, just those two things right there, what it is and how it works, and then you said everything, not just something, everything that you think that you understand will only confuse you. And I can tell that, Mr. Fuller, by the questions that I get from people who I communicate in the street, and it doesn't matter what the subject may be, they don't really get it. And you say it at the beginning of the book. And to me, it's just so profound. I think from what I can gather in my little research that I've done, and the questions that people ask me or the things that they talk about, you really don't understand. You have to go back to understand that. So then the question would come up, Mr. Fuller, before we take a comment here, is how do you understand racism, what it is, and how it works?
You by observing, just like you understand anything. First of all, you have to gain knowledge about what people are doing. So you have to actually pay attention to white people, and then pay attention to non-white people, and pay attention to every detail of what white people do, of what white people say. I mean, fine detail. You got to really listen and look.
Yes.
You got just walking down the street. Pay attention. You're looking at buildings and cars passing by, and people walking their dogs and all like that. You have to really pay attention to what people are actually doing every second.
Yes, sir.
And you study that. You just stand there and just look at people. Look at people, people with baby strollers. I mean, people who are buying tickets to the theater. Look at everything that people are doing. Look at what they are buying tickets to look at when they go to the theater.
Yes, sir.
And ask yourself questions over and over again. What are they going in that theater for? And when they go in there to get something, they're going in there to get something. Otherwise, they wouldn't be going in there. People are kind of made that way. They're trying to get something. People are always trying to get something. So if people are lined up around the block to go into a theater, a place called a theater that's making a quote-unquote presentation, look at the people who are lined up. All right, look at who they are, whether they're white, non-white, male, female, et cetera, and then look at the marquee and say, now, they are lined up to go in this theater to see what? And in order to achieve what? Because people are always trying to achieve something. I mean, every animal, every ant, every fly on the wall is trying to achieve something. People are no different. You're going in there for something. This is something you want. You're going in there to achieve, the satisfaction for what you want. You're going to get some kind of satisfaction from whatever it is you're going in here for. And then when you get that satisfaction, what is going to produce that satisfaction?
Yes.
And what is going to be the result of what was produced? See, these are the things that you think about.
All right.
And it's really simple. I mean, you just pay attention. Just don't walk around in the world, just passing by things. Pay attention to everything.
Yes.
I mean, that building going up 2 blocks away. I mean, what is that building going up? I mean, why are they putting a building there? What kind of building is it? And then when they finish the building, what is going to be going on in that building? Sometimes I just walk down the street and look at buildings.
And
I
ask
don't
questions.
think the average person does that. I just walk down the street and do nothing but look at buildings. And then I ask a question. So it's like I said, everything comes from a question.
And answer.
I say, what are they doing in that building, and for what reason?
So then that would lead me, before we go to the phone lines, that would lead me to say this, that in order to get started, particularly since we are speaking or addressing the subject of racism, then, and correct me if I am wrong, because I myself am still learning, there would have to be on one's part an acknowledgement that I don't understand racism. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
But then most people will say, I don't need to understand it.
Why did you say they would say
I got
that?
other things to do. I mean, now they don't say that directly.
Yes.
They'll just say, oh, yeah, racism is out there. Now, these are the kind of expressions I get sometimes.
Okay.
And have gotten all down through the decades. Oh, yeah, man. I mean, you talking this racism stuff. Oh, yeah, everybody knows about that. I mean, we know it's out there. Then you say, out where? See, there's one question after another. You have to raise questions.
Yes, sir.
What do you mean when you say out there?
Okay.
Racism is out there.
It's out there.
Yeah, out where? Well, I mean, man, you know what I'm talking about. It's out there. Racism, it's here. Okay, it's out there, and it's also here. Now, what does that mean? Well, it just means that, there's some white people who are all messed up in the mind, man, and they messing with people. But I ain't got time for that foolishness, man. I got to make me some money. All right? Now, I'm talking about typical barbershop conversation, okay? I ain't interested in all that, man. I mean, you're talking all that off-the-wall stuff about some white man, this and all this. I mean, hey, I got to make me some money. Now, you tell me how to make some money. Okay, so that's a question. That's a legitimate question because all questions are legitimate because all questions have answers. Then you go into the answering mode for every question that is raised. Oh, you got to make you some money. Oh, okay. Race is not your problem. Money is your problem. Is that it? Yeah, money. Money, that's what makes the world go round. Man, give me some money. Everything else, okay. So, money makes the world go round. You got to have some money. Now, I got a question. See, it always comes back to a question. Thousands of questions. Okay. Where are you going to get money from? Well, I'm going to get money from I'll get money from wherever it's at. Well, where is money at?
I see.
See what I mean?
Yes.
And this is the procedure.
Continually.
See, because I'm going to tell you what, everything, if you're black, that you start talking about is going to lead right to the race problem.
Yes, continually asking questions. You're listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTameItRadio.com. That is radio the way it should be heard. We have a question from Travis, and he says, Dear Mr. Fuller, how or in what way specifically can a person consciously and effectively work at eliminating racism and white supremacy if they have already subconsciously engaged in such a contradictory lifestyle as so-called interracial marriage explained in the Codified Word Guide, page 177, subsequently or subconsciously participated in such ongoing acts of direct racist aggression as sexual play between white and non-white, explained in the Codified Word Guide, page 179, and subconsciously promoted the extinction of a people who appear to be white by producing offspring through the aforementioned acts of sexual play, explained as incorrect even after the elimination of racism throughout the known universe in the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept on page 200 to 201.
Okay, that's a very, very long question, but I'll try to get to the essence of it by answering in this manner. Everything that black people, the victims of racism, do in the system of white supremacy is supportive of racism so far. We liken it to a prison. We are prisoners of war. It's not like we're trying to be captured. Trying to avoid capture, or that someone is trying to capture us. We were born in captivity. Every person who is classified as non-white who is on this planet was born in captivity. Captivity to whom? By whom? By those white people who have chosen to be white supremacists. So we were born already in their prison camp, which is the entire planet. If you have color in your skin, you are already in that prison camp. So naturally, if you're a prisoner of war, and it is a war, and you have been captured in that war, you will do the things that prisoners do. So that includes whom you have sexual intercourse with will be dictated to you by the warden. So if you're talking about so-called interracial marriage and all like that, the white supremacists have control of all areas of activity of their prisoners. Economics, all of the areas of activity, economics, education, how you educate your prisoners, entertainment, how you entertain your prisoners or allow your prisoners to entertain themselves. You got restrictions on that, you know. And usually they want the prisoners to entertain themselves by doing a lot of things that really are very trivial, and certainly not anything that would lead to them breaking out of the prison. You can't entertain yourself like that. They pay attention to that, you know. But you can entertain yourself in any way that's not a threat to the prison system. Laughing and joking and whatnot, you can do. Tell them any kind of way, what kind of sounds you make with instruments, what kind of songs you sing and all like that. The white supremacists would just check it out in the field of entertainment and say, well, it's no threat to the system of white supremacy. In fact, it's very supportive of the white supremacists, because a lot of the songs that black people sing are about misusing each other and killing each other and whatnot. So the white supremacists will examine that and say, oh, I'm all right with that. I got no problem with that at all. Okay, go right ahead. Just go ahead and tap to it. I mean, blow your horns about it. Fill up the theaters with it. I mean, as long as it's something derogatory about you people, that's going to keep you in the condition that you're in, and you're not going to progress at all. So if you sing any kind of song or come up with any kind of lyrics and whatnot that will help support that. I mean, you know, you want to bust a cap in each other, that's go right ahead. I'll endorse that. In fact, I'll help finance it, you know. You know, whatever lyrics you put in your songs, I mean, it's going to lead in that direction. You doing harm to yourself and people that look like you. That's supportive of the system of racism.
Yes, sir.
Then they move on to the labor thing, and law, and politics, and religion, and then the thing that the gentleman just mentioned, sex. Oh, yeah, we will examine what you do, and we will allow you to do a number of things. You know, particularly we're in the process now of sexual sabotage of black people all over the world. We are sabotaging your sexuality right in front of your eyes, with you being complicit in it under the banner of sexual diversity. See what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Sexual freedom. Oh, you just don't want to be restricted to, you know, in your sexual freedom. You know, don't you believe in freedom, boys and girls? Don't you? My prisoners, don't you believe in freedom? You know, you're prisoners. Don't you believe in freedom? All prisoners believe in freedom. And we say, yes, 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 sir. You know, well, don't you want sexual freedom? Yes. Well, what you need is more diversity. I mean, free to be diverse. Don't you want that? Say, yeah, I guess so. You know, is that good? Say, well, it could be, you know. And so let's see, what kind of sexual activities do you have? Well, now, don't limit it. Let's kind of stretch it out a little bit. I mean, that, you know, anytime you are having freedom, that means you're stretching, right? So you just keep on stretching. You just stretch it as far as you can go. And they wink at each other and say, hey, we got them going again. You know, our prison system is working beautifully, and that's in every area of activity.
And the last one would be war.
Yes,
okay.
Same thing. I mean, you know, they tell us who to fight, when, you know, who to prepare to fight, and then they blend the war with the sexual activity,
the
8th area of activity with the 9th area. They'll say,
yes, sir.
Oh, well, now, we got a lot of black people who are marching around, but every now and then they don't want to fight somebody that we tell them to fight. I mean, in fact, they sit up and play that banjo and whatnot and think about maybe they should go home and be with their girlfriend, you know. Well, now, suppose we make their girlfriend fight right alongside of him. Then he won't be running off, going nowhere. He won't be AWL. He'll always be right there on the job.
AWOL,
and
yes.
Better still, suppose we take that black male, and rather than have him long to be with his girlfriend, you know, Melinda, or whatever her name is, or Keisha, thousands of miles away, he's texting her and writing her and talking to her and talking about when he wants to be home and all like that. Suppose we take that black soldier and make his girlfriend a white male.
Wow.
Have them.
What is that noise? Wow.
In the same tent together.
Yes.
That way, they will die in each other's arms.
Right.
And it's real cheap.
Yeah,
we don't have to worry about him running off.
Right. The Temptations call that a ball of confusion. You know what that noise is, Galen?
I do not know what that noise is. Somebody breathing into the mic.
Somebody know? Okay. Well, whoever that is. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Line number, what is it, Galen? Line number 1? Okay, you're on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your comment? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, you speaking to me, brother?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thanks for taking this call. As of today, I would say racism, white supremacy will not be eliminated or defeated. Now, if you got a country, you might be able to coexist with it, but you will not eliminate it or defeat it because it has gotten out of control. I was in Vietnam, and Vietnam is a classic example of what I'm saying. After Vietnam defeated the U.S., and I came home 2 or 3 years later, I saw products here made in Vietnam. So even though Vietnam still defeated them, they still had to come to white supremacy if they wanted to do business, if they wanted an ATM in their country, if they want to participate in the banking system. Out of all that fighting, they still had to come to them. And that's one of the things that got Gaddafi in trouble. He felt he still had to come to them, and then they moved on it. Now, I want to ask Brother Fuller this. As I look back in history, before these people came up on people of color, they was fighting and killing each other. They used to fight and kill each other and take the children and the women and your animals. Then when they came up on people of color, then they was able to come together and have a common enemy. But these people have been doing this since they've been on the planet.
So now, your question would be what?
My question would be, Mr. Fuller, what I first said, I do not see white supremacy being defeated. You might can get some land or something and hold your own, but there is no defeating the system of white supremacy because it is out of control, and there's no government who's trying to defeat it. They just coexist with it.
Okay.
And could you hold me on to his answer?
All right, Mr. Fuller, you care to address his comments?
Well, people have said that and come to that conclusion. In fact, a gentleman said to me, in fact, I've heard this expression at least on several occasions down through the decades. It's almost a cliche with some people, I guess, because I've heard this expression on different occasions and different decades, and that is racism cannot be eliminated. It can only be discussed. In other words, we can come on programs like this and we can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk until we get exhausted and fall down and then wake up and start talking again, but it'll still be there. In other words, it's something that's permanent. So I thought about that every time I've heard it, because you want to consider everything that is said if you're trying to solve a problem. So basically, that means that the problem cannot be solved. Now, I don't believe that. If I believed that, I would not be on this program or any other program. Mm-hmm. And if anybody ever mentioned anything about racism to me, I wouldn't even talk about it, because I say that a problem that cannot be solved is not worth discussing. You're losing time discussing a problem, how to solve a problem that cannot be solved. That is really insane. So anybody who is talking about racism and has assumed that racism is going to be here, that it can't be solved, that you have to accommodate it, there's no point in even talking about it.
Wow.
See what I mean?
Yes, sir.
So therefore, I concluded, oh no, racism is manufactured by people, and anything that people build can be replaced by people.
All right.
TalkTainment.com.
Check us out on WCRS-FM 98.3 Wednesday and Sunday evenings. Blogs and podcasts are available. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or tablet. We go where you go. Radio the way it should be heard. On the other side of the break, we have more of your calls. Thank you, brother, for calling in. And we'll be right back after these important words.
TalkTainmentRadio.com is the premier internet radio platform offering 40-plus talk radio-style programs professionally produced, optimized for online distribution, featuring Columbus, Ohio on-air personalities. TalkTainmentRadio.com offers listeners diverse programming options covering topics such as arts and culture, love, life and relationships, technology, religion, paranormal activities, local and national politics, women's issues, alongside health and wellness. Listeners can access their favorite TalkTainmentRadio.com programs free of cost through the website. Download the TTR app to your cell phone and you can take us wherever you go. We have programs on demand to fit your schedule through our podcast. The address is TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Hello, I'm Lisa Stockdale from Senior Agenda, and I would like to encourage you to visit the Worthington Retirement Community here in Central Ohio. I've had the privilege of working closely with the staff and residents over at the Worthington for the past couple of years, and I can promise you they make a wonderful community. If you or a loved one are considering retirement living, you'll want to pay them a visit before you make your next move. When you choose to join the Worthington, you'll gain the peace of mind that comes from knowing that their independent retirement lifestyle simplifies your retirement living. They take care of the cooking, shopping, and cleaning so that you can focus on the things that are truly important to you. Plan to visit the Worthington today. They're conveniently located at 1201 Riva Ridge Boulevard in Gahanna, Ohio. You can call ahead to schedule a tour at 614-933-8640 or just stop in. Be sure to tell them Lisa sent you and enjoy your retirement living.
This show, A Conversation with Dawn Karima, has been nominated for an Indigenous Music Award, which is just such a great honor. Take a minute and please vote at AboriginalPeoplesChoice.com or Indigenous Music Awards. You can just find it on Google. For this show, A Conversation with Dawn Karima, and my CD, The Stars of Heaven, for Best Gospel, and this show for Best Radio Program. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody. Stop by and vote and tell them this is where great things happen.
Hey guys, let's play some video games.
This new dad plays video games with his sons, but the challenge feels like he's lifting a metric ton.
So many buttons.
His avatar just stares at the walls, twists and turns and somehow falls.
Help me!
He's tangled up in the controller's cord.
I just don't understand this crazy digital world.
Crazy, crazy digital world. Zeros and ones. But the love from his kids is totally apparent. Ooh. See, you don't have to be perfect to be the perfect parent.
You should have just played catch.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of siblings in foster care will take you just as you are. For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Goodwill is a global social services enterprise and the leading nonprofit provider of job training programs and career services in the United States and Canada. To pay for its program, Goodwill sells donated clothes and other household items in more than 2,700 stores and online at shopgoodwill.com. Goodwill uses the revenue earned from these sales to fund job training, employment placement services, and other community programs. The goal of the campaign is to increase goods donations to Goodwill, inspire an emotional connection to the Goodwill brand, and to elevate preference for Goodwill.
It may be hard to believe, but people just like you are already saving money. FeedThePig.org makes it easy. Their simple savings plan teaches you how to start saving without going overboard, so you don't need to sell all your belongings and live in a commune.
These dungarees belong to all of us now, Tom.
You don't need to get a second job as a stuntman.
We need a new stuntman!
You just need FeedThePig.org. Don't get left behind. Get tips and tools at FeedThePig.org. Brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
This is a test to find out if you know it all when it comes to children. Name one of the leading killers of U.S. children age 1 to 13. What's the best way to protect children in a car crash? At what age and size should a child start using a booster seat?
Don't assume you know it all when it comes to car seats for your child. Go to safercar.gov/the-right-seat and know for sure. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Go ahead. Make my day.
You got the power.
Okay, welcome back to a second slice of the action here on TalkTainmentRadio.com. You are listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. Now, if you would like to get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can email me at 7mrbobby at gmail.com. That's 7mrbobby at gmail.com. Got a suggestion from one of our loyal listeners by the name of Desmond. I'm not going to use his last name. And Desmond, I'm going to kind of culture your statement, but he says that he agrees that all questions should be considered. But he says we're all in this together. And now this is what Desmond is saying. He said, callers, can you please ask the callers to just ask their questions and maybe make a comment afterwards, because he says as a listener, he's looking for Mr. Fuller to answer the question. So Desmond is saying, please be brief and then ask your question and then have Mr. Fuller address your questions because they're looking for clarity. The callers are looking for clarity. And Desmond, you are correct. You are correct in that. So callers, Desmond is suggesting, and we are too, that when you do call in here, you can make a statement, but first of all, be brief, considerate of your other brothers and sisters, and then ask your question so Mr. Fuller can address whatever your question is, because there are other people out here, Desmond, Leona, and so forth, who are out there, who are listening, who want to hear what Mr. Fuller has to say. So please ask your questions in brief, and then let Mr. Fuller answer your question. Desmond, I had to slice it up, but I think you know what I mean, on that. And thank you for calling in. Before we go to the phone lines, we have a question from Victor, who is in Canada. Thank you, Victor, for calling. Why don't you Gmail me back and tell me what part of Canada you're in? But thank you for listening in. He says, Mr. Fuller, how do you use the textbook and workbook together solve or cope with problems within the three areas of education, employment, and law?
Well, all of the areas of activity are interrelated, all of the 9. I mean, so if you're doing something in law, you're also affecting what's going on in religion or in sex, because there are laws that pertain to sex and religion throughout the world, different laws, and some of them are enforced, I mean, with great intensity. I mean, sometimes, that people don't approve of them and whatnot. So you just look at the laws of wherever you are, that governs everything, and you try not to break any law that's going to cause you to have less ability to do the things that you should be doing, which is primarily producing a thing called justice. So that is the way you go with that. And just continue in that vein, just wherever you happen to be, in any area of activity. The objective, the thing that you should always think about, is how can you best go about guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's number one. And the second guarantee is guaranteeing that the person who needs help the most gets the most constructive help.
Mm-hmm.
That's the compensatory definition,
yes,
one
sir.
that I made up,
Absolutely.
for justice.
Mm-hmm.
So, see, justice is the antidote for racism and all the other evils, the things like the gentleman who called in a few minutes ago and said something about black people slaughtering each other. I mean, long before there was a thing called white supremacy. Well, that wasn't just either. See, so the whole idea is to replace the system of white supremacy, which is the latest and most poisonous system, with the system of justice. Justice has never been, he's correct, established in recorded history. There's no record of that, where no person is being mistreated. You guarantee that no person is going to get mistreated now, all right? And you also guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. That doesn't exist anywhere on the planet right now, but it should exist everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It has to exist everywhere, otherwise you can't call it justice. So that should be the focus. That's what I mean by focus and clarity.
Yes, sir.
You always know what it is you're trying to do. Once you lose sight on what it is you're trying to do, you just run out here doing anything.
Absolutely.
And saying anything.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay, you're listening again to the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and we will go to the phone lines. Line number 1. Okay, what is your brief question for Mr. Fuller, and allow him to answer? Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. I'm Tyreek from the Bronx. My question to Mr. Fuller is, he once said that black people looked at as lazy and shiftless, and for that reason we must seek knowledge. So my question is, how do we get black people to want to read and seek knowledge as he does?
Excellent question, Tyreek. Mr. Fuller?
Like you do when you communicate with anybody. You talk to them. That's what I'm doing now. There is such a thing called talk. In fact, this program is called Talktainment, trying to attain something, I guess, through talk. So that's what you do. You talk to people. Now, that is very scientific, too, because black people talk all the time. But I have said in the textbook, you always raise a question. Here again, we got that question thing. All problems are solved through questions. So when you're talking to a person, any person, white or non-white, you say, well, wait a minute, we're talking, but are we doing constructive talk? See, this is the question. And that just asking that question alone, suppose every black person, every non-white person on the planet who is talking to a person right now would ask him or herself that question. Is this talk that we are doing right now of constructive value, or is it non-constructive? Because if it's non-constructive, we need to shut up right this minute. We need to shut up right this minute in every barbershop, beauty parlor, whatever. Wait a minute. If we're just sitting up here gossiping about people, according to the code, the counter-racist code, hey, it's not productive. It's not constructive. Gossip. And what is gossip? Gossip is saying something about a person that you wouldn't say if the person was standing there listening. That's the definition of gossip according to the compensatory code. All right? So if you catch yourself doing that, you say, wait a minute, I'm saying something about this person, but I wouldn't say this about this person if this person was standing here. So I'm not going to say it. Now, just that alone would help change the world for the better.
Yes, sir.
No gossiping.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Don't say anything about a person that you wouldn't say without the person standing there. Now, suppose black people adopted that. I mean, that's a painful thing because, hey, that's a part of our quote-unquote culture. We run our mouths all the time about people that we even call friends. And, but you're saying things about that quote-unquote friend that you wouldn't say if that so-called friend was standing there.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So if you just stop that alone, now we are changing in the type of people that we should be. because ultimately we're in the universe.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, Brother Tyreek, I hope that, from Brooklyn, I hope that answered your question. All righty. You're listening to The Compensatory Concept, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. That is radio the way it should be heard. I am Mr. Bobby, the co-host, and I have a barrier, and the barrier is named Leona, and she guides me along and lets me know when I'm messing up. So I hope I'm not messing up today, Leona. Question from Brother Jamal, and I'm going to make an attempt not to give last names, but he asked a detailed question for me and Mr. Fuller. Well, first of all, Jamal, I try not to answer. This is for Mr. Fuller to answer your question, but I appreciate you wanting me to participate in it. I try not to do that, to answer the questions because they are for Mr. Fuller. He says, hello to you. This is Brother Jamal. Mr. Fuller has established the understanding that non-white people cannot be racist. He says non-white folks can only mistreat others. Some believe that there are those non-white people, maybe Louis Farrakhan, for example, that are racist. Logically speaking, not all white people are white supremacists. So when we see what appears to be hatred and wanting to kill white people, is that just severe mistreatment in the utmost adverse degree? What would that be called? Thanks. This actually is addressed to Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. It would be interesting to get both of your views on that. I got to give that to Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller?
Well, that's sort of an extended question again, which I don't understand all the facets of it, but I'll try to answer as best I can according to what I've written. First of all, I never say that all white people are racist, but those who are able to be are what? Racist suspects. Suspected by whom? By whomever's doing the suspecting. So that's all a choice. That's why I call the code that I've written the United Independent Code. I can suspect any white person of being a racist that I want to suspect. Why? Because I'm a victim of racism. That comes under Victims Guaranteed Qualification. I'm qualified to do that. So is every other non-white person on the planet. Why? Because racism exists, which means somebody has to be a racist. If it exists, somebody's got to be practicing racism. Now, the question is, who is that somebody? Since we don't have, rather I don't have it, a master list of everybody who's a racist and everybody who's not. Maybe someone should come up with one, a worldwide list. So they'll say, Mr. Paul Berry, whomever that is, who is white, living in Madison, Wisconsin. I mean, you know, but I'm not pointing out anybody. I mean, I'm just making up this right off the top of my head. Mr. Paul Berry of such and such an address, who lives in Madison, Wisconsin, is white, and he is a racist. He's a registered racist. So you can put his name on the list of the racist people, okay? But next door is Miss Eleanor Jones, and she's white, but she's not a racist. I don't know of any list like that anywhere on the planet. So therefore, if you have racism, somebody's got to be a racist. So you can suspect anybody who's able to be one, and that word able is very important, may be one, since white supremacy and the racism in the form of white supremacy is the dominant political and religious force on this planet. It's stronger than any religion, so much so that white supremacy itself is a religion. It's the strongest religion that has ever existed. There's no religion anywhere on this planet right now in 2015 stronger than the religion of white supremacy. And that statement I just made is either true or false.
Yes, sir. Okay. Again, you are listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and you can get in contact with the show by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. And as one brother has already pointed out, Desmond, when you do call in, please address your questions to Mr. Fuller and make them brief so that he'll have time to answer it, because the listeners have said that they want to hear what Mr. Fuller has to say. Let's go to line number 2. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. What is your question?
Good morning to you, and we always enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Great information from both of you. And the question that we would like to ask, when you're dealing with Ferguson, Missouri, and Baltimore, Cleveland, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Georgia, New York, all these cities, that shows demonstration and continuously unrest, agitation. And this system, it appears to me it cannot produce justice, or can it produce justice? That's our question.
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
Can the system of white supremacy produce justice?
Yes, sir.
No, absolutely not. The system of white supremacy is dedicated to maintaining non-justice. So you have to come up with a completely different system, and that would mean a system of justice. Justice is the antidote to non-justice. White supremacy is the dedication to non-justice. So you have to get rid of the entire system. Otherwise, everything, like someone alluded to earlier in the program, is going to stay the same. You got to get rid of the system of white supremacy. And the way to do that is through a counter-racist code, because the white supremacists have a racist code. But you have to study what that code is, and study, which means to study what they do and how they go about doing it. And then you come up with an antidote for everything that they are doing. That's what counter-racist codification is. Black people don't have anything near that. We do not have anything near a counter-racist code. And that's what the non-white people of this planet should be trying to build. I have tried to start the infancy of it by the book that I have produced. That's why I call it producejustice.com.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you are you're welcome, dear. Thank you so much. Again, 1-877-932-9766. We do have a couple of lines open. If you'd like to get in contact with Mr. Fuller, or Gmail me quickly at 7mrbobby@gmail.com, and I will try to get your question on. Got a question from John in Great Britain, Mr. Fuller, and I try to look up this word. He says, do you agree with our efforts to use the British government racial and ethnic codes as, now this is the word that I try to look up, it's called immunization, not zation, but sation method against white supremacy. I tried to look that word up, immunization, not zation, immunization method against white supremacy. Okay, I don't know what that word means, and I tried to look it up. Anybody knows what that word means, Gmail me. But anyway, Mr. Fuller, he says, do you agree with the British efforts, or his efforts, or whatever group he's associated with, to use British government racial and ethnic codes as immunization method against white supremacy?
Well, I don't know anything about what he's talking about.
Okay.
But I do know that the system of white supremacy might go by all kinds of names.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but very seldom will people ever call it that. They skip around those terms like you wouldn't believe. It's almost like it's a forbidden term. You can't, if you say white supremacy is racism and racism is white supremacy, that they're one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I say it all the time, but I don't hear it echoed anywhere, because people, I mean, they become alarmed. I mean, just it's something magic about it. It's weird in a way of speaking. But they will say, "Oh, don't call it white supremacy. Call it, bigotry.
Mm-hmm.
Call it racial discrimination. Call it, segregation. Call it. Let's find something else to call it. Don't call it that. No, I'm gonna call it what it is.
What it is.
I'm gonna call it what it is. That's why everybody's afraid of it. White people run from it, even though they gave it to me.
Yes, sir.
They bragged about it for years, but when they went into the refinement stage, that's not all of the white people, but the white people who believe in white supremacy, they used to brag about it.
Yes, sir.
They gave me the term. I didn't make up that term. And they said they were proud of it. And they have different vague ways now of still saying that they're proud of it.
Still saying
when they fly certain flags and all like that.
Yeah.
See what I mean? But that's the refinement stage. See, try to make it look like it's something that is not.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All righty. Let's go to the phone lines. Line number 1. What is your question for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr.?
My question to Mr. Fuller Jr. is that based on history, isn't it safe to assume that if you even try to eradicate or try to make an attempt to eradicate this system, that they will eliminate you? If you look at the history of the leaders in America and possibly leaders around the world that we're not as familiar with, but people who have tried to change this policy or make modifications, they will find a way to eliminate you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Well, he made a series of statements there, so the statements stand on their own, I guess.
Well, I guess he was. Caller, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you contain it a little bit and just make it a little bit plain in question form so that he may address it?
Yeah, it's almost like like you take a Dr. King or you take a Malcolm X. You take people who have tried to address this system, and that some kind of way that they find a way to, and in a sense, a message to people that look, we're not to be messed with. That this system is going to continue. That we will cut the voice off, or the head off the chicken, so to speak. So that's what I'm saying, is that they have proven that they would take pride in eliminating the person who is trying to alter this system in any kind of way.
Mr. Fuller?
Well, it's not a question. So, I said, his statements stand on their own. I mean, the white supremacists always study whomever is doing whatever they're doing. They study everything. They're the greatest students of the universe who have ever appeared on the planet, because they study everything. They study a grain of sand on the bottom of the ocean, and they will put that grain of sand under a microscope and sit there and stare at it for 100 years, trying to figure out what that grain of sand is there for, because everything in the universe is there for a purpose. The white supremacists study everything. That's why that makes them the smartest people on the planet, because they study everything, not just some things. I'll walk past a whole pile of sand, and I didn't even see it. Why? Because I don't know what to do with it, whatnot, and don't care. What do black people pay attention to more than anything else? Truth be told. That's a question.
Be told.
They pay attention to each other. That's why we don't learn anything, because we don't pay attention to the universe around us, and we definitely don't pay attention to the people who are most powerful over us, and that's the white supremacists. We pass right by white people all the time. Let's tell the truth now. And we don't even see them. But we'll see a black person 3 blocks away. And usually, depending on the mindset of the black person, the closer you get to that black person that you're looking at 3 blocks away, the more hostile you become toward that person.
And that is
Truth
true.
Be told. And the gunfire proves it.
Thank you so much for your call, caller. And finally, from Freedom Fighter, it says, Mr. Fuller, what are the significance of racial jokes? I don't know what that meant on that. He said, Freedom Fighter says, why do you think white people write books, make movies, and tell racist jokes exposing their racist code? They act like they aren't concerned about their system being replaced. That was from Freedom Fighter.
It's because they are really not concerned. I mean, they look at black people's minds, and they say, what do black people really think about most of the time? Trivial things, the things that we have taught them. Chasing little toys, I mean, the latest toy, whatever is on the counter. I mean, doorbusters. I mean, lining up, to buy something, the latest little toy.
Yes.
And mostly they're just interested in just standing around chit-chatting with each other.
Yes.
Until they finally say something that gets on each other's nerves, and that breaks out in some type of violence. And so the white supremacists make jokes about it because they say we are a joke. When you're looking at a black person, you're looking at a walking joke.
Wow. Well, unfortunately, time is gone. So thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. Thank you for listening. TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. We'll see you next week.
Heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio.
Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are